All right, get ready to dive deep, everyone, because today we're tackling remote viewing. But not the spy stuff, though. That's pretty cool, too.
Yeah, we'll leave that for the movies.
We're talking about using it for healing. We've got a ton of Matthew Brownell's work to dig into. He uses something called MAT, muscle alignment technique, and it all comes back to remote viewing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. I mean, most people, when they hear remote viewing, they think, CIA, psychic spies.
Right, like trying to see what's happening in some secret bunker halfway across the world.
Exactly. And while, yeah, there's definitely that whole exploration of it for, intelligence gathering, but RV, it's really about tapping into like a shared consciousness. You can use it to access information about, well, anything, really.
Okay, so less about finding hidden bunkers and more like, what? A cosmic internet.
Oh.
Instead of cat videos, we're searching for, like, hidden knowledge of the human body.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you think about traditional RV as using a search engine, right? Like
Yeah.
you're trying to pinpoint a location on a map.
There's some coordinates, yeah.
Right, coordinates. But what Brownell does with MAT, it's like he's using that same search engine, but instead of geographic locations, he's honing in on specific points in the body.
To find what, like, energy imbalances?
Exactly, exactly. He's like an energy detective.
So is that where his book, Seeing is Healing, comes in? That's where he talks about those classic RV protocols.
Right, all the structured steps, yeah.
Like a how-to guide for tapping into this, well, this kind of seeing.
Exactly. And he makes an interesting comparison, Like, think about how intelligence agencies would train operatives. They would want them to be able to, say, find the location of a hidden bunker, right?
Right.
But in this case, the target might be like a meridian point, like in traditional Chinese medicine, or even an area of tension in the fascia.
Wow. So instead of seeing troop movements, he's seeing energy blockages.
Yeah.
But how does that, actually translate into healing? So he's seeing these energy blockages, but then what? How does that actually help someone heal?
So that's where body listening comes in. It's this, well, Brownell calls it body listening.
Okay.
He's not just trying to see using RV, but to listen. He's tuning into these really subtle energy signals that the body is sending out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, tapping into the body's own intelligence.
Right. And a lot of healing traditions, I mean, they've been saying this for centuries, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Like acupuncture, that's all about getting that chi flowing again.
Right, restoring the flow.
And in Ayurveda, you have the chakras. You need to balance the chakras.
Absolutely. And Brownell, he's drawing on a lot of these ancient principles, but he's applying this, this RV lens, which I think is super interesting.
What I thought was interesting in the book was, he kind of talks about how he got into all of this. And it started with his mom.
Yeah.
She used to use reflexology on him when he was a kid.
Oh, wow.
And she had this, like, intuitive ability to sense where his aches and pains were.
That's fascinating.
And she could, like, actually relieve them.
Just through touch.
Yeah. So it's like, that's kind of his origin story as a healer, I guess.
Right. And, this whole idea, this mind-body connection, it's not just some new age thing anymore.
Yeah.
Like, scientists are studying this. They even have a name for it. Psychoneuroimmunology. It's a mouthful.
It is. Yeah, but it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know about the fight or flight response. Right. I mean, that's real.
Exactly.
And Brownell, he talks about Dr. David Filton's work, this research showing that if you're stressed all the time, it keeps those stress hormones pumping.
Yeah, cortisol, adrenaline, they're just
flooding your system.
Yeah, it's like a constant state of emergency.
And what does that lead to? Muscle tension, inflammation, I mean, all sorts of problems.
Exactly. Your body it's in overdrive all the time.
Yeah.
And it can't sustain that. Something's got to give.
So Brownell's saying he can actually see this tension in the body's energy field.
With RV? Yeah. Like imagine, when there's a traffic jam.
Yeah.
And everything just backs up. It's a mess.
Oh, yeah.
He says that stress and negative emotions, they create that kind of congestion in our energy flow.
Mm.
And that congestion, he says, that's what manifests as physical ailments.
So it's almost like he's clearing an energetic traffic jam. He's getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly. Instead of just like, slapping a Band-Aid on it.
Right, like taking a pill to mask the symptom.
Exactly. You're not really addressing the underlying issue.
And does it actually work?
Well, Brownell has had some remarkable results. He talks about this one patient. She had chronic pain for years. Nothing seemed to help. And after just 2 sessions with MAT, her pain was completely gone.
Wow. 2 sessions. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we need more research, obviously, but these anecdotal accounts, they're pretty compelling. It really makes you wonder, what if we're just scratching the surface here? with this kind of energy work.
Right. Like, what if there's a whole other level of healing that we're just starting to understand?
Exactly.
Okay, we have to talk about fascia, because that seems to be a big part of Brownell's whole
It's
approach.
huge.
And for people who don't know, I mean, it's basically this connective tissue that's everywhere in your body.
It's like the scaffolding that holds everything together,
Yeah.
surrounds your muscles, your organs.
Like a web.
Yeah, like this intricate web that connects everything.
And Brownell says that the fascia, it's like the highway for chi.
Right. And if that highway is blocked,
Yeah.
you're going to have problems.
And that's interesting because even Western medicine, they're starting to realize how important fascia is.
It's true.
There's actually been some recent research suggesting that there might even be a whole other sensory system within the fascia.
Really?
Yeah, within our blood vessels and sweat glands.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And some researchers think that this could explain some types of chronic pain that, like, doctors have never really understood.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else don't we know?
Exactly.
And what Brownell says is he can use MAT to influence the energy flow through the fascia.
And he doesn't even have to touch the person, right?
Right. He's not manipulating it physically. He says it's more about working with the body's energy field from a distance.
And I think he mentions there's a case in the book, a little kid, I think, with epilepsy.
Yeah, really severe seizures.
And after just one treatment, the seizures were, like, drastically reduced.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And again, yeah, we need more research, but when you hear stories like that, you can't help but be intrigued.
I know. It really makes you think.
It really makes you look at that whole mind-body connection differently.
It really does.
And, Brownell doesn't just stop at the physical stuff.
Right.
He's saying these energy blockages, the fascia stuff, it's not random.
No. He believes there are these patterns.
Patterns.
Yeah, repeating patterns in the body, and they're rooted in stress, trapped emotions, even stuff from the past, trauma that we might not even remember consciously.
Wow.
Yeah, and he sees MAT as this way to, like, realign those patterns, not just physically, but on an energetic level, and emotionally, too.
So a total system reset.
Exactly. And then he brings in this whole other idea, quantum entanglement.
Okay, now we're getting really out there.
It's pretty wild, I know. But it's basically this idea that, like, two particles, even if they're miles apart,
Yeah.
they can still affect each other instantly.
So Brownell's using that as, like, a metaphor.
Exactly, for how everything is interconnected. So if we change our own energy, it impacts other people. It could even impact the world around us.
So it's not just about, like, our own individual healing. It's about collective healing, too.
That's the idea. And there's actually some research that this project, the Global Consciousness Project,
I think I've heard that.
they had these random number generators all over the world.
Right.
And they wanted to see if, like, big global events, if those had any measurable effect, like, on randomness.
And did they?
During times when there was a lot of, like, heightened global emotion, things like 9/11,
Yeah.
those random number generators, they actually showed less randomness.
Wow.
Like, there was this coherence, a synchronization of consciousness globally.
So our collective emotions were literally affecting reality.
It seems like it. It's pretty amazing.
It is. So where does Brownell, where does he leave us with all this?
He ends on a hopeful note, He admits that RV and MAT, they're not, magic.
Right.
But he really believes they can be powerful tools for breaking out of those patterns we get stuck in. And for our well-being, obviously. And who knows, maybe even creating a ripple effect. Positive change in the world.
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. And he talks about this thing, tapping into a patient's true self. What's that all about?
Oh, yeah. He describes it as, like, this pure, radiant energy that's inside every single one of us, like a wellspring of healing and wholeness. And it goes way beyond our everyday thoughts and feelings. It's deeper.
So what does all this mean for you? Well, maybe it's time to start listening to your body, really paying attention. Because those aches and pains, even those things that keep happening over and over in your life, maybe those are messages, invitations to go deeper, to find that healing, to connect with that true self. Definitely a lot to think about. Okay, so PEMF therapy.
Right.
Like, it's everywhere.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Promising all these amazing things like pain relief, faster healing, help with some pretty serious conditions even.
Definitely.
But, I think it's good to be skeptical.
Of course, always good to be skeptical.
Like, how much of this is hype?
Right.
How much of it is really legit?
Exactly.
And I think that's a perfect place to jump into today's deep dive because
Absolutely.
we have got a whole bunch of research snippets about PEMF therapy.
We do.
And they're from all over.
Yeah.
Some of them go back decades.
Yeah.
So we're going to look back
Yeah.
kind of chronologically
Okay.
at how the understanding of PEMF has kind of evolved over time. And then we're going to sort of like zoom in
Right.
on some of the most interesting findings.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So are you ready to decode the wild world of PEMF therapy?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Because I think this is going to be a good one.
Me too. It's a fascinating field.
And, to really wrap our heads around it,
Yeah.
we need to start with, like, the most basic understanding
Okay.
of what it is,
Okay.
which is this: the Earth's magnetic field.
Right. Exactly. And, it sounds kind of mystical, right, when you say it like that?
It really does.
The Earth's magnetic field, it sounds like,
like some energy, like a crystal or something.
Right, but it's not mystical at all.
Okay.
I mean, it's a real measurable phenomenon.
Okay.
Surrounds our planet. And for millennia, humans have been constantly bathed in it.
Okay, so there's this magnetic field.
Yes.
It's been around forever. We're constantly bathed in it.
Right.
But does it actually, like, do anything?
That's the thing.
Because I can't see it, I can't feel it.
Right, and that's what's so amazing is that we don't consciously sense it,
Right.
but it's thought to have this really profound impact on us
Okay.
at a cellular level.
Okay.
So it's like our cells are tuned into this invisible force.
Okay.
And it helps regulate all sorts of biological processes.
So we're all like vibing
We're vibing.
with the Earth's magnetic field.
Exactly.
Our cells are happy.
They're happy.
Then what? Like, where does the whole, like, therapy part come in?
Right. Well, so imagine this. You're an astronaut.
Okay.
You're rocketing into space. You're experiencing zero gravity,
Right.
breathtaking views,
Yeah.
and a whole lot of unexpected health issues.
Wait, the astronauts were getting sick.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So early astronauts, they were returning to Earth, muscle weakness, fatigue, bone loss.
I thought that was just like adjusting to gravity again.
Well, gravity definitely plays a role.
Okay.
But researchers realized that another major factor was the lack of exposure to, you guessed it,
Yeah.
the Earth's magnetic field.
No way.
Yeah.
So they were like magnetically deficient.
Basically, yeah. It's like their bodies went on this like very unwelcome detox from this force they were used to.
That's wild. So what did they do?
That's where PEMF technology comes in. They started incorporating PEMF devices into spacesuits and spacecraft to mimic the Earth's magnetic field.
Hold on. So the same tech that's keeping astronauts alive is now being used for therapy here on Earth.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's amazing. You've got to admit, they had us in the first half.
I know, right?
I'm hooked now. I am a hook.
And it gets even more intriguing, I think, as we go, especially when we look at some of the early research. One area that might surprise you is Alzheimer's disease.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah. We actually have some research excerpts here from the early 90s, 91 and 94, and researchers were using a PEMF with Alzheimer's patients and seeing some pretty remarkable results.
Wow. Okay, now we're talking about like a really, really serious condition.
Right.
How could PEMS possibly even have an influence on something as complex as Alzheimer's?
That's the million-dollar question. We're still in the early stages of understanding how it all works, but those early studies showed that PEMF could potentially improve visual memory, drawing ability, even mood in Alzheimer's patients.
Really?
Yeah.
It seems unbelievable.
It does, doesn't it?
But it's, hopeful, maybe,
It is hopeful.
if it turns out to be true.
Yeah.
I'm dying to know, what are the theories?
Okay.
How does this even work?
So there are a couple of leading hypotheses.
Okay.
One is that PEMF might actually stimulate the growth and repair of neurons in the brain.
Okay.
Another theory is that PEMF improves blood flow to the brain,
Okay.
which essentially gives those brain cells more of the oxygen and nutrients they need to thrive.
So we're talking about protecting brain cells.
Potentially, yeah.
That's huge.
It's huge, yeah.
Okay. I can see why people would be fascinated by this.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I noticed something kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
When I was looking through all this research,
Yeah.
a lot of the studies we have seem to be from a specific part of the world.
Yeah, you're right. You can't really talk about PEMF without talking about Russia.
Russia.
Yeah, they have been light years ahead of the West on this.
Really?
Yeah, I'm serious. Back in the 1970s, they were already heavily invested in PEMF research.
Mhm.
And it's not just research. PEMF is considered mainstream medicine in Russia.
Really?
They have thousands of treatment centers. Millions of patients have been treated with PEMF. It's even government approved.
Wow. Government approved in Russia. That's a pretty stark contrast to like how it's viewed here. It's like, I feel like here it's like this best kept secret,
Right.
or maybe there's just more to uncover
Right.
about how effective it is.
Yeah, it's really interesting how that happens, isn't it?
It is.
That what one part of the world embraces, another approaches with much more caution.
Yeah.
And that difference in approach, I think, is something to keep in mind as we look at the research, too.
Okay. So Russia's all in on PEMF.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Mm.
But I'm curious, what prompted them to embrace it so wholeheartedly? While, over here in the West, it's been a much more cautious approach.
Right. Well, I think one possible explanation is just their different approach to healthcare in general.
Okay.
Russian medicine has a long history of utilizing alternative and energy-based therapies.
Like acupuncture.
Exactly. Acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, things like that.
So PEMF maybe just kind of aligned more
Right.
with their existing medical paradigm.
Exactly. Exactly. Whereas here in the West, I think, with our emphasis on pharmaceuticals and surgery,
Right.
PEMF might have seemed like a little bit more of a radical departure.
Different cultural context.
Right.
Different paths to exploring new treatments.
For sure. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Mhm.
But let's bring it back to the science for a second. You mentioned that Russia has been using TEMF to treat millions of patients.
They have.
Do their experiences, their result, do they align at all
Right.
with what the research is showing?
That is the gold star question. It's really hard to draw definitive conclusions because the research methodologies, they vary, from study to study, but the anecdotal evidence coming out of Russia does seem pretty promising.
Okay, what kind of anecdotal evidence are we talking about?
Wow.
Are there similar benefits?
Yeah, so you remember that long list of conditions we kind of skimmed through?
Right.
It seems like the Russians have thrown PEMF at just about everything.
Okay.
And while more research is always needed, some of the areas where they've seen the most promising results do seem to align with the studies that we have been talking about, like bone healing.
Right, because the astronauts were dealing with bone loss, right?
Exactly.
So PEMF?
There's actually a great study from 1982 by Dr. Bassett
Okay.
and his colleagues.
Okay.
And they were working with patients with non-union fractures. So these are basically fractures that just refuse to heal properly. Oh, wow. So they've gone through multiple surgeries, bone grafts, everything.
Exactly. They've gone through all of it.
And still nothing.
And still no proper healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be incredibly frustrating and painful.
I bet.
And that's where PEMF came in. Bassett and his team, they found that 87% of the patients who were treated with PEMF,
Wow.
in combination with bone grafts, experienced successful healing.
87%. That's incredible.
It is remarkable, yeah.
But I'm curious, when we say bone healing, what does that actually mean?
That's a good question.
Is it like speeding up the healing process
Oh,
or something more?
yeah, so it seems to do both. So it seems to accelerate the healing timeline, but it also, and this is perhaps more importantly, it seems to promote healing in a way that's more aligned with the body's natural processes. Oh, so it's not just about how quickly the bones heal, it's how well they heal.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like giving your cells a little nudge in the right direction, helping them communicate more effectively and rebuild stronger.
What about other bone conditions? Like, I know osteoporosis is a big one,
Huge.
especially as people get older.
Yeah, osteoporosis is a huge concern.
Yeah.
And the research on PEMF and osteoporosis is actually quite promising. There's a really interesting long-term study from 1992 by Riva Sanseverino and colleagues.
Okay.
And they followed over 3,000 patients for 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. They found that PEMF was not only highly effective in improving bone density, but it also had no reported side effects.
No side effects.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
I know, right?
Okay, so stronger bones, no side effects.
Yeah.
Okay, are you starting to see why I was excited about this deep dive?
I am. This is really interesting stuff.
But we've been talking a lot about bones.
Yeah.
What about some other areas where PEMF shows promise?
Well, aside from bones, another area where PEMF really shines is in wound healing.
Wound healing.
Yeah.
So like cuts and scrapes, that kind of thing.
We're talking everything from minor wounds to surgical incisions,
Right.
even diabetic ulcers.
Diabetic ulcers, those are really hard to heal, right?
They are notoriously difficult to heal. They often lead to complications, a much longer healing process.
Right.
But there's a compelling study from 1995 by Salzberg and his team,
Okay.
and they specifically looked at using PEMF to treat pressure ulcers in spinal cord injury patients.
Oh.
So these patients often develop pressure sores because of, well, pressure from being in one position for long periods. And these sores can be incredibly painful and very slow to heal.
I can imagine.
Right. So their study found that PEMF significantly sped up wound healing compared to standard treatment alone.
Significantly sped it up.
Yes, significantly.
Wow, that's amazing.
And not just a little bit.
So faster healing, less pain.
Yeah.
It sounds like it could be life-changing for people dealing with chronic wounds. But what's the magic behind it?
Right.
How does PEMF work on like a cellular level to actually make wounds heal faster?
Right. So while the exact mechanisms are still being studied,
Okay.
it seems that PEMF essentially jumpstarts the body's natural healing cascade. So the pulsed electromagnetic fields interact with our cells. It's almost like giving them a little energy boost, enhancing communication and encouraging them to repair and regenerate.
It's like an energy boost for your cells.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right. Who couldn't use a little energy boost for their cells?
After this long day, I know I could.
Yeah.
Okay, so if PEMF can help with wound healing,
Yeah.
does that mean that it could also be good for just like
That's a great question.
pain relief in general?
It is a great question, and it's something that researchers are actively exploring.
Okay.
There's growing interest in using PEMF for pain management,
Okay.
especially for chronic conditions like arthritis.
Arthritis, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's so common.
It is.
And the pain can be,
Debilitating.
really debilitating. Yeah.
Abs-
What does the research say about PEMF in arthritis?
Well, there's a double-blind study from 1994 by Trock and colleagues that I think you'll find interesting.
Okay.
They were studying the effects of PEMF on osteoarthritis of the knee
Okay.
and cervical spine.
So arthritis in the knees and neck.
Yeah.
Two areas that I think can really, really impact someone's,
Huge impact,
quality of life.
for sure.
And this was a double-blind study.
It was.
So that means that it was well controlled.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what happened?
So they found that the group who received PEMF experienced significantly more pain relief and improved mobility compared to the group that got a placebo.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, pretty remarkable. So not only can it potentially help heal bones and wounds faster, but it might offer real relief for people who are dealing with chronic pain.
It's pretty incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible. So for our listeners out there who are thinking, okay, this is all sounds great in theory, but like, what is it actually like?
Right.
What would you say?
I think a lot of people imagine it's this very intense experience,
Okay.
but it's actually quite subtle.
Okay.
Some people report feeling a mild tingling or warmth where the PEMF device is applied,
Okay.
kind of like a gentle buzzing.
Okay, so it's not like those, sci-fi movies where people are getting like zapped with electricity.
No, not at all.
Okay.
The electromagnetic fields used in PEMF therapy are very low energy.
Oh.
It's a completely different thing.
Gentle buzzing, I can get behind that. But even if you don't feel much physically,
Yeah.
are there any kind of mental or emotional effects that people experience?
Yeah, that's an area where more research is definitely needed.
Okay.
But some people report feeling incredibly relaxed during and after PEMF therapy. Almost like they've just had like a meditative session.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there are even anecdotal accounts of people experiencing better sleep, reduced anxiety, even a boost in mood.
It's like hitting the reset button
It really
on your whole system, body and mind.
Exactly.
But with all the buzz, right, around PEMF these days,
Yeah.
some listeners might be wondering if it's just another,
Right.
passing health fad.
Yeah, it's true that PEMF has recently gained a lot of popularity, but it's important to remember that this isn't some fly-by-night trend. As we've discussed today, PEMF is actually grounded in decades of scientific research.
Right.
And while more research is always needed, there's already a pretty compelling body of evidence, especially when it comes to things like bone healing and wound healing.
Right. It's not some kind of magical cure-all. But
Yeah.
it's not going away anytime soon either.
Exactly.
And with all this ongoing research, like, who knows what other possibilities are out there just waiting to be discovered?
I know. It's so exciting to think about.
It is exciting. You've given us a lot to think about today.
It's been my pleasure.
So for those listening who are now completely fascinated by PEMF therapy,
Yeah.
what's the best way for them to kind of learn more or start exploring this on their own?
Well, I always recommend talking to your doctor or a qualified healthcare professional. See if PEMF therapy might be right for you.
Okay.
And if you're considering trying it out, do your research, find a reputable provider.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information out there, so it's really important to be an informed consumer.
Be an informed consumer. Always excellent advice.
Always good advice.
Well, this deep dive has been quite a journey
It has.
from the depths of space
Right.
to the intricacies of our cells.
It's all connected.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
And I think one thing is for sure, PEMF therapy is definitely more than just hype.
I agree.
It's a real testament to the power of scientific curiosity
Absolutely.
and this potential of harnessing these like unseen forces
Yes.
to improve our health and well-being.
Show much potential.
So if you're intrigued by the possibilities of PEMF therapy, do your research, keep an open mind, and as always, keep exploring.
Here.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It was great to be here.